Even as difficult as many of these processes are, I feel like I am helping people to get through the process just because we do it so much and we know what the law is and we know how to help people with the least amount of difficulty. During that initial conference call, we will answer every question that you have. We're not going to get off the phone and say, well, we only want to answer your estate planning question. Whatever your questions are, we're going to take the time during that initial conference call to address any concerns or questions that you might have. A potential client will call our office and they will get a staff member, and the staff member will ask questions, a series of questions, and do an intake. And usually that staff member is going to understand, based on the questions that you ask, what you're looking for, to do the proper intake for your issue. If during that intake they have questions about your situation, they'll ask either myself or Jenna or one of our paralegals to make sure that we've got you in the right track. But then they might also tell you, hey, go to our YouTube channel and look at this video on Medicaid planning, or look at this video on estate planning, or look at this video on exploitation or probate. And they, are going to give you some general information about what to expect during that first call, either with Jenna Fasulo or another associate attorney or myself. That can be helpful to us because, we want you to have as much information as possible before we have that initial call.
We have our general process of phone intake, then meeting with the attorneys and what have you, but sometimes there are just those situations that are emergencies. So emergency temporary guardianships, exploitation injunctions that have to be done quickly. So typically our staff is able to identify those issues and then we expedite that process when we absolutely need to get something done on a very short time frame, either because that's what the law is going to require, or frankly there is just something happening with this individual, with this family, that we just need to address right away.
During that initial call, we're going to ask more questions and really try to vet your circumstances and situation so that we can then quote you a proper fee for what you might need in order to solve your problem. If it's doing a guardianship matter, if it's dealing with an exploitation litigation case, if it's doing an exploitation injunction, if it's doing an appropriate Medicaid plan or an estate plan of some nature, we're going to be able to quote you what it costs during that initial call. Sometimes we do it by Zoom. Sometimes we'll have people come into the office face-to-face if they want an in-person meeting. So then what happens is we draft a retainer agreement that lays out, how we're going to be retained. And we also send you some sort of questionnaire for your process. So for example, if you're in estate planning, we'll send you an estate planning questionnaire. If you're doing guardianship, we're going to send you a guardianship questionnaire. And we're also going to send you a packet of information of what to expect during your process. It's basically get to know our team members. It's a little welcome packet that has all the information about our firm, who your team member is going to be. Usually you're assigned a paralegal who's going to be with you through your process. And it really gives you an idea of who everyone is and what their roles are, who our office manager is. And then from that point, you're also going to see what your process is, because it'll say, here are your next steps. And it goes through the next steps from the beginning of the process all the way to the end of the process. And if you're in a life care planning process, that may extend for years. We may have you in a maintenance program where you say, I want to continually have access to our elder care coordinator and to attorney services. And so that extended arrangement or attorney-client interaction may be long-term. So that'll be up to you and us to decide whether or not we want to continue with that representation moving forward. So like a guardianship matter, if it's an emergency guardianship, it can usually happen pretty quickly within, a week or two. Full guardianship process is usually going to take a couple of months. So you can expect from beginning to end, it's going to take 2 months, sometimes 3 months at the far end, depending on how busy the courts are. And then as far as a probate matter, you can expect that that's going to take somewhere between 9 months, sometimes 18 months, depending on how complicated the estate assets are, if there's any probate matter or litigation. Litigation processes vary. We can have some very quick litigation issues. We can send a demand letter saying give the money back, or like a civil theft demand when someone's exploited somebody and said, hey, you stole $30,000, give the $30,000 back, or you're going to be stuck with a $90,000 bill if you don't give that money back within 30 days. That's called a civil theft demand. And sometimes that's very effective. We've seen turnarounds in those kinds of litigation matters that we're done with the case in 30 days. Other litigation cases have taken longer. We've had some protracted litigation that can take up to 2 to 4 years. So it's hard to estimate on a protracted litigation matter how long things are going to take. Sometimes it's short, sometimes it takes longer. Probate and trust litigation are the same. You know, it's going to take sometimes a long time to get through the discovery process and get to a trial. And then as far as Medicaid planning, depending on what assets exist that we need to kind of shift around or retitle and get in place in order to qualify, typically those cases are very fast. We can move those usually within 30 to 60 days. And you know, it really just depends on your circumstances. So if you can get stuff done quickly and back to us, the client's process is going to take a lot less time if we have good client cooperation.